Indeed, I know you don't want to stay long, so I'll announce the award straight away. The winner this year is Barack Obama. He hasn't done any journalism, but we're hoping he might do a piece for Private Eye. No, that's obviously very silly. That would be bent and corrupt. We'd have to rerun it and give it to Mr. Karzai. We're here to remember Paul. The Paul Foot Awards, it's All Saints' Day yesterday, which Paul wouldn't have known or cared about. But I would probably have reminded him to annoy him. He wasn't very keen on remembering the saints. I have a favourite story of going to see him in hospital after he had his first stroke, and the only way to get a reaction out of him was to say, "We're praying for you." See, that's not quite true. There was another way later where we said, "You're on Bupa." Which point a hand came up. He's not a saint, he wasn't a saint, but there is a sense in which 5 years on we're still doing this award and Paul remains extraordinarily alive. He's a great reminder that journalism, people say it's fish and chip paper the next day. Well, that isn't always true. You think about the Lockerbie story, Paul's investigation from 5-6 years ago is still the starting point for a story that's still going on now. The ludicrous detail, I love the idea of Paul's reaction that this man was freed for compassionate reasons. That would have amused him. So in a sense, a lot of Paul's stories still go on. He died 5 years ago, and we set up a prize to try and encourage investigative journalism, which needs encouraging for obvious reasons, particularly in a recession. It's difficult, it's slow, it's expensive, it's risky. There's no advertising, there are very few local papers. People are more interested in the death of the dinner party as a subject to fill the paper. Yeah, no, it's an important issue. But it's a problem, and there are threats. This year has seen quite a lot of threats to investigative journalism. This is a joint award with The Guardian, and the editor of The Guardian and I were called to talk to the Parliamentary Select Committee about the problems of libel and of injunctions. I tried to make some serious point, and Russ Bridger just made a load of cheap jokes. It's not strictly true, it was the other way round. I was asked about Max Mosley, and I said that he wanted to punish journalists, which for him was a compliment. Don't think that bit made the actual proper report. But we were serious. I said there was a chill wind of libel blowing, and particularly in terms of these super injunctions. And Alan said it wasn't a big problem for The Guardian, and that was pre-Trafigura. So we had a good laugh later when The Guardian was hit by it. These are the injunctions that they're served on you. You're not allowed to say what was in the injunction, and you're not allowed to say there was an injunction. And at this point, we all look up to our right. Oh, charming portrait of Mr. Marr. And we take that thought home. The reason the Eye published the questions in the House about Trafigura were not only to show solidarity with The Guardian, obviously, but because the first bit of the question from Paul Farrony was about the Eye, and it was about our case against a solicitor called Napier. Now, this, again, was originally a story of Paul's. More than 10 years ago, a power station blew up in Hong Kong. A lot of people died, there was an inquest, the barrister involved in the case was told, "You've got some evidence here, don't offer it to the court." He blew the whistle, got sacked for trying to get to the facts of why these people had died, hired a solicitor to represent him, who it turned out was working for the company that owned the thing that blew up. Obviously, this was a bit of a problem for him, and Paul started this story. All these years later, Private Eye were injuncted for saying there was a conflict of interest. The solicitor, who was president of the Law Society, was reported to his own society and reprimanded. In came the injunction. We weren't allowed to say that he'd been reprimanded. We weren't allowed to say who it was. This took 5 months to argue through the courts. We went to one court, and we won a case presided over by Justice Eadie. Now, you can imagine how crap their case must have been. That we won in front of Eadie. Unbelievable. Anyway, they took it to the appeal court, and we managed to win in the appeal court. But at the risk of about £500,000 in an attempt to raise this. I mention that not merely to gloat at the fact that it was Carter Ruck who lost, though it was, again, as well as Trafigura, but to say that even a story that Paul would have written 10 years ago thinking, I think I've got this story going, never quite finishes, and his influence is still there. So I feel he's still there, and I think he would have enjoyed the shortlist from this year. He'd have enjoyed the long list too. But the idea that there were stories about MPs' expenses in the House of Commons, again, Carter Ruck involved, trying to stop that. Not that they're in all the stories, but they are. House of Lords expenses, police brutality, torture with the involvement of the security services, legal malpractice, massive waste of public money at universities and public bodies. I mean, he would have loved this set of entries. Paul pinned a bit of a poem by Hilaire Belloc on top of my desk, which I think was meant to be part of my general education. It was from the Ballad of General Misapprehension. And it was just a couplet that said, these are the things that people do not know. They do not know because they are not told. And he said that was it. The main job was to tell them. So, I think that mission has been extremely well done by our shortlist this year, which I